Welcome back to Well and Worthy Life. I'm so excited to have another great guest on here for you guys. So you've heard me, I've had Cynthia Thurlow on here a couple of times, and she told me about Dr. Jenn Simmons, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her today and for us to learn more about her together. I've just spoken to her briefly, and I already love her so much. So you're going to love her too. But let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Jenn Simmons. So she is a breast cancer surgeon. Actually, she was Philadelphia's first fellowship trained breast surgeon, which I think is pretty impressive right there. But then listen to this. She turned to functional medicine. Okay, what doctor says that? Because she gave up a very lucrative career and rewarding career, but she wanted to empower women on their breast cancer journey to achieve real health. So welcome to Well and Worthy Life podcast, Doctor. Can I call you Dr. Jenn? What should I call you?
You can call me Dr. Jenn. You can call me Jenn. It's fine. Just don't call me Jennifer, because then I'll think I'm in trouble.
Oh, okay.
If the Jennifer comes out, I have done something wrong.
That's great. Well, Dr. Jenn, I'm so excited to have you here and to learn more about your journey and how in the world you went from being this breast cancer surgeon in Philadelphia to then switching gears and getting into functional medicine. Yeah, so let's just start at the beginning.
It's quite a journey. Yeah. So first of all, I have to thank Cynthia Thurlow, because she's given me a lot of street cred. She's talking me up and people are calling. Awesome. So I love it. I have to thank Cynthia. And she who is an amazing practitioner and healer in her own right. So I will share with you the journey that I went on, but I think I can summarize it best. I'm about to leave surgery and I get asked to dinner by a friend. His name is Mark Nicoletti, and he is on the board of Jefferson Hospital in Philadelphia. And he was just really so concerned that I was making a mistake. And so he takes me out to dinner and he sits me down and he says, "Now, let me get this straight. You're driving down the Autobahn in your Porsche doing 220 on the top of your game. You pull over, get out of the car, and get into a Prius and get on the road again doing 55. What is going on here?"
Oh my God. I love that.
But functional medicine was the bell that I couldn't unring. And anyone who has had their own health challenges and has been forced to be a part of our conventional medical system as a patient, once you realize that there's another way, you can't ever go back. So I am in the breast cancer space very naturally and organically. Growing up, I had a first cousin. Her name was Linda Creed. Linda was a singer-songwriter in the 1970s and 1980s. She wrote all the music for the Spinners and the Stylistics. She was the queen of Motown sound in Philadelphia. Beautiful, brilliant, larger than life. And she was my hero. I mean, I had a cousin who was literally a rock star. Like That's some people crazy. Are like, hey, my cousin's a rock star. I'm like, no, my cousin is a rock star, like literally.
Right.
So the most famous song she ever wrote was The Greatest Love of All. She wrote that song in 1977 as the title track to the movie The Greatest, starring Muhammad Ali. But it really received its acclaim when Whitney Houston released that song to the world in March of 1986. And at that time, it would spend 14 weeks at the top of the charts. Only Linda would never know, because Linda died of metastatic breast cancer 1 month after Whitney released that song.
Oh.
I was 16 years old at the time, and my hero died. And I literally don't remember a time when I didn't know about breast cancer and what breast cancer was, because Linda was diagnosed at 29 and died at 37. I knew the pain, I knew the devastation. And because Linda was so famous, I watched an entire community grieve, like feel their pain.
Mm.
And so that no other family member of mine, because every woman in my family has breast cancer except for the ones that have colon, so that I didn't have to watch another family member go through it. I didn't have to watch my own family go through it. I didn't have to watch my community go through it or anyone's community go through it. I dedicated my life to solving the breast cancer problem.
Mhm.
And I did the only thing I knew how to do. So I became a doctor. I became a surgeon. I became the first fellowship trained breast surgeon in Philadelphia. And I am doing amazing things. I'm doing oncoplastic surgery. I'm doing reconstructions. I'm finding a silver lining for people. And I'm running the cancer program for my hospital. And I am literally 10 years into my career and I am at the top of my game.
Mm.
And I do that. And about 5 years later, I go from being a top surgeon, running a cancer program, a wife, a mother, a stepmother, an athlete, a philanthropist, burning my candle at both ends and feeling invincible to I can't walk across the room. I have no reserve at all. I'm so short of breath. I'm having constant palpitations. And I have this exhaustive 3-day workup. And I'm sitting in the office of my friend and colleague and physician. And he tells me that I need surgery and chemo radiation. And I'm going to be on lifelong medication. And I realize that these are things that I say to people all day, every
So did you
day.
have breast cancer at that
I
point?
didn't have breast cancer. I had Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid that is life-threatening and treated just like cancer. And so, like, I completely appreciate the irony. And yet, something told me that there had to be another way, that I just inherently did not understand how God would give me an organ that I was going to remove, obliterate, and then had to replace what that organ was doing for the rest of my life, or I would die.
Mhm.
It just didn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
And so I looked for answers outside of my system, even though I knew that this was standard of care. I'm running a cancer program. So, this is entirely hypocritical of me to walk out of that office. And my friend said, you're going to die. Like you can't not do this. You're going to die. And I mean, I know it was God that guided me out of that office that day. I know that it was God that took me on the rest of that journey. I don't know that I was as confident then as I am now. I have the benefit of the retrospectoscope.
Yeah, looking back is always 2020.
Yeah.
I always say that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. But sometimes you
Um,
have to trust in God. I mean, and just
yeah.
feel and listen.
Yeah.
Listen to
And
yourself.
listen, which is one of our biggest problems is that we have become so disconnected with our body. We've become disconnected with our health. We've become disconnected with nature, with circadian rhythm, with the sun and the moon,
Mhm.
that, we lose our health in the translation. So I walk away and I do some research and I go to the place that I tell everyone not to go. I go to Dr. Google, which at that time actually was far more reliable than it is now, because now it is so censored that you really can't find holistic answers on Google anymore. You have to search in other places. But
Mhm.
then, I kept seeing, I said, how do I heal my thyroid? And again and again and again, I see references to diet, 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 diet. Now, I'm a doctor for 20 years at this point, and I'm not overweight. And so, I think that I know what I need to know. And I certainly know what they taught me in medical school. And we were trained in medical school to think that if it's not taught to us, it's either not important or not true, or maybe both. Right. So
true.
I think I know everything I need to know. And then at the same time, I'm sick. So I realize that this is an avenue worth exploring. So I decide I'm going to enroll in IIN, but not after torturing them plenty, because I did. Are you sure I'm going to learn anything? I'm a doctor. Like, what could you possibly have to teach me? It's a certificate course. And, it was thousands of dollars, which,
I'm IIN certified also. So
I mean, all of my health coaches are IIN certified. It's actually an amazing program that I highly, highly, highly recommend.
Right.
So I'm in IIN, and one of the first lecturers is a man named Mark Hyman. So Mark Hyman walks on the stage and introduces himself as a functional medicine physician. Now, realize that this is 2017, and though he had written some best-selling books, I had never heard of him. And I'm listening to him introduce himself as a functional medicine physician. And I said, the hell is a functional medicine physician? Like, there's no such thing. What is this quack talking about? Right? Which is how everyone responded to him until they figured out that he was the only one in the room who knew what they were talking about.
Right.
So, and I remember that I'm sick and I'm there for a reason. And so I decide to check my snooty booty self, at my ego at the door, and shut up and listen. And thank God I did, because within 5 minutes of him speaking, my entire world makes sense. And I know that the reason that I got sick was so that I could be in that room, in that chair on that day, listening to him speak. Because what he's saying not only is the solution for me and my healing, but it brings light to everything that's wrong with cancer treatment and how to really get people well. Because what I was doing as a surgeon was just delaying the inevitable, right? Mm-hmm. Cutting out the tumor is not the solution, because it does not do anything to ultimately affect anyone's health, right? And it's just delaying the progression of that disease, but it's not getting anyone healthier, and it's not eliminating the reason why they got the disease in the first place. So they're just going to go on to manifest the next thing, right? So all I did was scar them and delay the next manifestation. And in listening to him, it makes me realize that our focus on the tumor is the absolute wrong place to focus. And that what we need to do is focus on the person and figure out, what is the cancer trying to tell us? Because all of our illnesses, they're messages. They're so that we listen. And when we don't listen to the whispers, we get screams. And that's what these diagnoses are. So my diagnosis, that was my body telling me, you're on the wrong path, right? And maybe that was God telling me I was on the wrong path. So I am an early adopter for sure. Once I see, I'm gone. And so I enrolled in the Institute for Functional Medicine that day.
Oh, I love that.
That day. Oh. So spent the next 3 years just immersed in learning everything that I could about functional medicine, about integrative cancer care. And I resigned from my job, walked away from surgery at the height of my career, and opened Real Health MD. And I still help anyone along the breast cancer spectrum, but I help them to restore their health, so that for most of these women, they are actually knowing health for the first time in their lives.
Oh, Wow, what a story. I mean, truly a story. Okay, so I have so many questions. So one is, you look very healthy today. So obviously you were able to heal yourself.
I was. It was not a linear healing journey though.
Okay.
So remember, like
Nobody has a linear
Yeah.
journey, do they?
So, because I had just started, I was not working with a functional medicine physician because I was learning the power of it a little bit at a time. And I'm sure when you were at IIN, did you go on every diet you learned about?
I did not.
Oh, you didn't?
I did.
Oh, wow. God
did.
bless you. I went on every diet I learned about.
But
Every single one.
I mean, I didn't have, no, I did not. No, good Lord, they go through so many diets.
I know. I know. My family was like, we can't take it anymore. You do your thing. We're going to do ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of it was hard for me because like it's not a political thing. I'm wearing a leather jacket, but I am like inherently a vegan. Not for political reasons, just like as a kid, you never had to tell me to eat my vegetables. It was everything else that you had to tell me to eat. And so the meat diets were not easy for me to try. And I actually didn't feel well when I was doing them. But
I think that's a great point right there, though, that one of the big things that we learned at IIN is that we are all bio individuals, and that, just like how you said, you leaned towards more vegetables when you're growing up. I think if we could, I'll watch my granddaughter now. I mean, she has been introduced to sugar, so she really leans towards sugar.
That is the biggest mistake. Like if I could turn back time, and even like I try with my grandchildren, but when you're the grandmother,
you're the grandmother.
But that's the biggest thing is like, wait as long as you can to introduce sugar. And like the best time is never.
Oh, really, I totally agree, because then you have a palate for it. And but I think it's very interesting because we do gravitate towards what we really need, or what our bodies really need.
Yeah.
And so, and just like you said, you didn't feel good on all meat. I feel better when I eat more meats than when I love vegetables. So I grew up, my grandparents had a farm. I used to go pick vegetables. I love my vegetables. So fresh vegetables, but I feel better like that. But if I eat a ton of grains, especially during the day, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
And, I know some people can eat grains any time of the day and they feel fine. We're just all different.
Yeah. Although, I don't think grains are good for anyone, actually.
Do you not?
No. I mean, we can talk about why, but when I read Dr. Peter Osborne's book, I think it's either called No Grains, No Pain, or No Pain, No Grains. I forget which one it is.
I did read The Grain Brain by.
Yeah. That one, and that one's amazing too.
Yeah, I did think. Yeah.
Is that Perlmutter's book?
Yes, I think that's right.
And then Wheat Belly is, I'll think of it. So between those three books,
right.
I mean, the truth is that we are modern beings living on a very, very, very old gene code. Our genes have not evolved very much in since the beginning of time. And we have only been eating grains for like the last 3,000 years. And the grains that we were eating then, I mean, we were eating einkorn wheat, right? Einkorn wheat has 14 chromosomes. The dwarf wheat that is consumed in this country has 44 chromosomes. This is not the same. And we have not evolved to even know that as food. So grains are the seeds of grasses. Grasses are consumed by ruminators. Ruminators have a very, very, very different, longer, far more redundant GI tract than we do. In comparison, we have a very short GI tract. So we are not able to unlock the nutrient from grains because our process is too fast. And so it's really just seen as foreign body in us. So some people will get a little bit of inflammation from grains. Some people will get a lot of inflammation from grains. I mean, if I eat grains the next day, everything is swollen. My brain is so slow. It's like it takes 12 hours for me to clear out the brain fog from grains.
Yeah, I get so tired and lethargic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. We're just, humans are
it makes
not
sense.
meant to consume grains. We're just not. That grains are the food of ruminators. And that's a lot of the reason why people don't tolerate dairy also. Yes, of course, lactose, and we don't make lactose for a long time in life. So yes, that's part of the issue. But the other part of it is that the proteins are essentially the same. Because if you have cows that are eating grass and then producing milk, where are those proteins coming from? They're coming from the grass.
Oh, yeah.
So there's so much cross reactivity. So if you don't tolerate grains, you're not going to tolerate dairy either, because the proteins are essentially the same.
I've never thought about that, because I had kind of cut down on my dairy, but then I was adding back in Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. I've learned that I can't really do a lot of cottage cheese either, though, because I don't feel as good. So, but I was trying to up my protein, because what are we talking about?
Yeah.
All over. Women, we need to up our protein as we get older.
Yeah. Especially, when we cross over 40, protein becomes an issue for two reasons. First, we get less and less efficient at extracting the protein from our food, at digesting the protein from our food, at absorbing the protein from our food. You think about kids. I mean, not that anyone should, but kids can live on a very low protein diet because they're extremely efficient at getting the protein out of, and all food, even broccoli, a cup of broccoli has 3 grams of protein.
Right.
So all food has protein in it, and children are very, very efficient at getting that protein. But as we cross over 40, we become much less efficient at unlocking that protein. The other thing is that our acid levels start to drop. And that is a major part of digestion that it goes totally unappreciated. And we have vilified acid in our society for the purposes of selling acid blockers. And we have people on acid blockers who are well beyond what they were prescribed and approved for. I mean, these acid blockers were approved for use over 2 to 4 weeks when you are healing an ulcer. And do you know that the average person is on an acid blocker for 4 years? 4 years.
I do believe that. Yeah, no, I definitely believe that. I think, well, before we started recording, I told you my father died of esophageal cancer, and he used to pop those Rolaids all the time. And I'm convinced that, the reflux was what aggravated him. And so we put him on acid blockers.
And so we didn't ask the question, like, why is the reflux happening? What's happening that causes the reflux? No. Let's just get rid of the symptom. Let's stop your body from perceiving the reflux. And then, what happens? The inflammation builds and builds and builds. And then you get a cancer diagnosis. And so the incidence of cancer in the people that take acid blockers is like 4-fold.
Wow.
And where's the ribbon for that? Why aren't we talking about this? It's so crazy. So I think what most people after 40 need is not less acid, it's more. We probably need acid supplementation because we get less efficient at making acid. And acid, if you don't have acid, you're not breaking down the food to its lowest common denominator. So it's not getting absorbed. You're not getting the nutrient you need. And also acid has other functions in the GI tract. So as the acid and food bolus leave your stomach, they signal the gallbladder to release bile. So if that's not happening, then you're not effectively digesting your fats. And you're also not going to have hormone balance without the bile salts, because the bile is what helps to change the hormones which have been broken down, it's what makes them water soluble so that we can poop them out. But if there's not enough bile salts around, then they just get reabsorbed into the system, and now you have hormone imbalance. So acid acid plays a role all the way up that pathway. And also acid is the signal for the pancreas to release pancreatic enzymes into the system. So if you're not doing that and not releasing pancreatic enzymes, then you're also having maldigestion. You're also not able to break down your food and get the nutrient, but then you're also affecting the function of the pancreas. And so a backed up pancreas is going to have its own ramifications. So we really have intervene in a highly negative way against the body's natural processes. And that's why we're seeing all this disease.
I mean, it really makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, because, we see so much more disease today than we did even 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, it is, I feel like so many women are diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like I have several friends, and I feel like it's one of those diseases that it's almost like it's not if you're going to get it, it's when you're going to get it.
Yeah. Well, I think that the statement that's easiest to say is that you literally will not go through life without being affected by breast cancer. So it's either going to be you or someone right? A relative, a neighbor, a friend. No one is getting through life without being affected by breast cancer, but it doesn't have to be that way. There is a genetic component, certainly, but our genes are just like a guide. They are not a mandate by any stretch of the imagination. And even if you have a BRCA mutation, your genes are not a mandate. And it's our environment that is the greatest influence on our health, without question. And that's the thing that you can't control everything. Of course, you can't control everything, but you can control a lot. And it's the people that take control that get to be in this place of optimal health. And that's really what we talk about in functional medicine. In our current conventional medical system, first of all, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. And we think of health as the absence of disease, but that's not health at all. Health is optimal function, right? But in the conventional medical system, you're fine, right? The line of fine, you're fine. Well, I don't feel well. Well, all your labs are normal. You're fine. And you're fine until you're not, right? You only have fine and failure. And there's no in between. But in functional medicine, we know that there's a spectrum. And what we're looking for is optimal, right? We don't want fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Or average. I tell my clients all the time, when you go to your doctor and they say, well, you're average, your levels are average.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you definitely don't want to be on this average, which includes 2.5 standard deviations from the mean. That you don't want to be average in that capacity at all.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you healed yourself, and it sounds like that's a long process that it took you.
It was a long process, and it definitely got worse before it got better, because about a year after I developed Graves' disease, I started to get the symptoms of MS. So which, God is just so amazing. So it was right before I went to whichever IFM, so the Institute for Functional Medicine, they teach in systems. And so one of the systems is called energy. And in the energy system, we talk a lot about mitochondria and mitochondrial health. Mitochondria are the parts of our cells that generate energy. And there are a lot of diseases that are associated with mitochondrial damage. So MS is one of them. Cancer is another. So I started with facial numbness, and my right hand was numb. I was dropping things. I was clumsy. I had brain fog. I kept falling. And so I go to the energy conference, and one of the lecturers is Dr. Terry Walls. So do you know Terry Walls?
No, I don't.
Okay. So I'll share this story with you as quickly
Yeah.
as I can. So Terry Walls is an internal medicine doctor.
Mhm.
She is at the University of Iowa Medical Center.
Mhm.
She is, I think, the residency program director there. So has a big job, has a lot of responsibility, and she develops MS. And she has primary progressive MS, which is a very aggressive form. And she goes from running the department to a zero gravity wheelchair where she can't even support her own body weight in 2 years. So this is very, very, very aggressive disease. Like to go from functioning to that in 2 years. Now, this is a woman who is at a university hospital, has access to everything, every clinical trial, everything that conventional medicine has to offer. And she's on all of it. She's on every drug, every infusion, everything. Nothing's working. She's only getting worse. She gets fired. She gets let go from her job because she can't perform the duties of her job anymore. I still can't remember, and I did interview her. I still can't remember the exact thing that made her try this, but she decided to change her diet. Now, she had been a 20-year vegetarian whose diet was very, very grain centric. Like basically everything she was eating was some kind of grain, sandwich on whole wheat bread, pasta, like a very grain centric diet. So she cuts out grains. She adds in a ton of greens, and she adds animal protein back into her diet because she knows that she needs more protein, and this is where she's going to have to get it. And I can't remember like where she stood on the lectin side of things, but mostly what she did was remove grains. And 3 weeks later, she starts to improve. And by 9 months, she's back at work walking. By a year, she is biking 20 miles a day. And now she is fully functional. She's not on any MS meds, except that I think she still has some trigeminal neuralgia and takes Neurontin for it. But other than that, she is symptom-free, living her best life. She wrote the Walls Protocol, teaching about it, helping thousands and thousands and thousands of people with MS reverse their disease. And so I'm having all these symptoms, and I go and listen to her talk. And I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for putting this in front of me. So while I had been trying every single diet according to IIN, I immediately removed all grains from my diet, all grains. And don't you know, my symptoms went away?
Okay, that's like right there. Just shows you.
It was crazy.
Oh my.
And I actually think that that's what was the turning point for me and my thyroid disease, because I hadn't gotten rid of grains. And I think that that was probably my trigger.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a crazy story.
But that just goes to show you right there how powerful food is. And I think that, I didn't connect the dots about how powerful food was until, so much later in life. It was like, I thought health was about exercise. That's what I thought, exercise and you were good. But then I saw both my parents who had exercised all their life get cancer. And I was like, wait, something something else is going on. So it made me it didn't wake me up though, till I was in my 50s, till I started thinking, wow, I may only have 9 or 10 good more years, since my dad died at 59 and my mom was sick with cancer at 60.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay, so let's go back to,
So
because
but I do want to expand on that exercise thing a little, because I
yeah,
think this is a
okay.
really important point. And this is a talk that I was having with Mindy Pels. Do you know Mindy?
Yes, I'm trying to get her on the podcast
Super
too.
brilliant. So Mindy and I were talking the other day, and there is this preoccupation that health and exercise are equal. And the
Right.
more you do, the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so women, as they cross over and go through menopause and they start to gain weight, and they think the solution is to do what they were doing before, but harder. So they start to exercise harder and they end up gaining weight.
Yep.
And this is what's happening there. So, whenever you burn fuel, and essentially that's what exercise is, you make exhaust, right?
Mm-hmm.
We become less and less efficient at processing that exhaust. So as you cross over 50, as you go through menopause, and you become less efficient at processing that exhaust, what's happening? We're just becoming more inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to turn that switch off. We need to rethink that. We need more gentle exercise on the other side of 50. We need to stop that heavy duty cardiovascular exercise. We need to stop pushing. It's not good for us. And we need to then shift the focus to lifting heavy things, right? Short bursts. I think Dave Asprey's new book talks all about this, but short bursts of intense exercise and a lot of rest. And then you've got to get that flexibility and balance in, because that's the mind body connection. And that's what we need to maintain.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that. I mean, I had to totally change my way of working out, because I hit over 50, and I was all of a sudden started gaining weight and the things that made your cardio, I was
right around your middle.
Yeah. And so I had to change. And I tell my clients all the time that too. I think that it's so hard for people to understand, to make the connection, because they're like, no, I got to burn more calories. But we have to be more gentler on our body. And then that lifting heavy weights, I think, is so important.
Yeah, you have to maintain your muscle mass. And for a lot of ladies, you almost have to build some muscle mass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm working on building it at this point. I feel like I've got good muscle mass, but continuing to build it, because we're losing it so fast. I'm about to be 58. I want to be strong.
Yep. You gotta up your protein. Got to make sure that you have stomach acid. And
so how do we make sure we have stomach acid?
Oh, you know what? You can mix a little bicarbonate with water and see how long it takes you to burp. It's all over the internet how you check.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that, because I've never heard that.
Yeah. And see, and if you have adequate stomach acid, and a lot of people don't, and it's something that's really easy to replace. So, and please know that this is not medical advice. This is for educational purposes only. But replacing stomach acid is easy to do, and you just take some tablets along with your meal when you're eating a meal, and it makes a huge difference in terms of digestion. So, another way that you don't have enough stomach acid is if you're seeing undigested food in your stool. That is a dead giveaway that you don't have enough stomach acid, because stomach acid should dissolve that.
That's really great information.
Yeah.
And so many people, I've never heard this before.
And sorry to say, but everyone needs to be looking at their poop.
Yes, and I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, we need to be comfortable talking about poop. We need to be comfortable talking about pooping. I was doing a camp physical for a friend yesterday, and I'm asking her son about his poop, and he was so embarrassed. And I was like, I know, buddy, but we got to talk about it. You just have to talk about your poop.
It's so funny because when I first started talking about it, I had Dr. William Bolshewitz on my
Mhm.
podcast, and
Oh,
we
he's
talked
brilliant. I
about
love him.
he is brilliant. And I was just like, I know he needs to, he's very open and talks
Yeah.
about it. I'm like, oh, it doesn't, but
Yeah.
now I've gotten to be okay with it. I have a friend that really likes to talk about it. I'm like, okay, enough. Enough.
Yeah. I don't think you need to talk about it all the time. I don't think you need to talk about it
Exactly,
everywhere, but we need to talk about it. We need to be comfortable talking about it. I actually, my son's going to kill me for saying this, but I took him to the pediatrician the other day for his yearly checkup, and she asked if he pooped every day, and he said no. And I'm like, what? How
Um,
know this? And also, every time I ask him to do something, he's like, I can't, I have to poop. So he lies to me.
Oh, how funny. That is hilarious. That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's really important to have a friend who says she's lucky if she goes once a week. I keep telling her, I'm like, you've got something going on, girl. You gotta.
And it's dangerous,
Mhm,
right? Because this is how we're getting rid of our toxins. That's
mhm,
one of the major ways. So we get rid of our toxins by pooping, by peeing, and by sweating.
mhm.
And if you're not doing those every day, then you are not getting rid of your toxic burden. And we are living in an increasingly more toxic world, right? We don't live on our mother's earth. We certainly don't live on our grandmother's earth. And toxins are abound. I mean, they are everywhere. Life is a toxic soup. So we all need to be super vigilant about our detoxification. So you should be pooping at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times a day, drinking plenty of filtered water. Your pee should be almost clear.
Mhm.
That's how hydrated you should be. And everyone needs to be sweating every single day. Every
Yeah,
single day.
right. Well, okay, so let's go back because we're running out of time and I've got so many questions and so many thoughts going through my head. So I'm gonna have to have you back on. But so right now you are a functional medicine doctor that really, I mean, are you helping mainly breast cancer patients, people that have been diagnosed with breast cancer, walk through this and figure
Yeah.
out what to
So
do?
I still think that I mostly appeal to the breast cancer crowd. And that if you don't have a diagnosis of breast cancer, you're a little afraid of me because you feel like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like,
Oh,
I don't want to engage her because, I have the breast cancer juju.
right.
But there are other people who hear my story and they have MS, or they have Graves' disease, or they have thyroid disease, or they have autoimmune disease. And every now and again, not nearly as much as I would like, I get people who want to prevent disease, but those are few and far between. Most people come to me because the horse is out of the barn and they've been diagnosed.
So that preventative thing. So that's what I mean, that's when I went to a functional medicine doctor, that's what I was looking for, was really preventative. I want to make sure, like I said, both my parents had cancer. The cancer they had was not hereditary. My aunt had breast cancer. So there's a little bit of
Yeah.
that in my family,
So
but
both of your parents' cancers were environmental.
yeah.
And, breast cancer, it's just one of those sensitive organs. So cancer is a normal response to an abnormal environment. And there are any number of things that can make that environment abnormal. And the reason that we see so much breast cancer, the reason that we see so much thyroid cancer is because these are especially sensitive organs. And so when the equilibrium is disturbed, they feel it more than most. But we have to stop thinking about cancer as other, right? It's as much a part of us as anything else. And the most important part for anyone before your cancer journey, when you're on your cancer journey, and after your cancer journey, because in our medical system, when we focus on the tumor and the tumor is then gone, if you respond to treatment, people think that they're done.
Mhm.
And the truth is that for most people, that's only the beginning, because that's your opportunity to reclaim your health so that you're not in that same position, or you're not waiting for the next shoe to drop, because unless you find your why, unless you restore health, unless you restore equilibrium, that next manifestation is coming. And for women, you know, there are some significant things that we just don't talk about. Like in every decade beyond the age of 40, women exponentially die more of heart disease than they do of breast cancer. Do you think 40-year-olds are out there worried about heart disease? No. But they're talking about breast cancer plenty, right? But they're in your 40s, you're dying twice as often of heart disease as breast cancer. And people just don't know and don't understand that. But the most important thing to know is it's the same thing at the root of both manifestations. So it's that chronic inflammation that is caused by chemicals, untreated infections, poor sleep. Like all of these things add up over time. And some people get heart disease, some people get breast cancer. Now, the population of women that gets breast cancer, if you don't intervene, if you don't find your why, those people are 2 to 3 times more likely to die of heart disease than the general population. And and that's twofold. It's because, first of all, you didn't find your why. So you didn't figure out where your inflammation is coming from, where that disease stimulus is coming from. And so you're just headed for your next diagnosis. And all of the treatments for breast cancer accelerate heart disease. So maybe not surgery, but chemotherapy, definitely, radiation, definitely, the hormone blockade that women get, that completely accelerates heart disease. So we are not talking to women about this. And we say that they're making informed decisions for their treatment, but they're really not. They're really not, because they don't know this and they're not being talked to about this. And I think it's completely unfair of the medical establishment to ask these people to trade one diagnosis for another. So yeah, we're saving you from breast cancer, and maybe that's true, but we're only setting them up for heart disease. And I think that as a medical establishment, we need to really do a much better job. Now, I think that there are some people that need all of those treatments. So, you know, if someone has aggressive disease, they have significant tumor burden, like their sink is overflowing. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, they're mopping up the floor, and you have to mop up the floor. However, you can't mop up the floor forever. And the far more important thing is to figure out, why is your sink overflowing? And that's where functional medicine comes in. So functional medicine to me isn't an or, it's an and it's the far more important part of the equation.
Oh, wow. Okay, I think that's a great place to end, because but I definitely want to have you back, because I want us to come back and talk more about hormone therapy, because you and I talked a little bit about that before we even got on this. So
spoiler alert, big believer.
Yes. So I really want us to have a longer conversation about this, but I think that's a great place to end, just to know it's not either or, like you know, if you have a breast cancer diagnosis or any kind of diagnosis, or maybe you don't have a diagnosis, but you want to prevent, that functional medicine. And here in Alabama, it's really hard. But the great thing is, it's like people like you're telehealth. So you can help anybody, right?
Yep. And I have a course online that anyone anywhere can take, that honestly, it will get you 80% of the way. It really will. Because most of these things that we need to promote health, because that's really what it's about. When we promote health, disease goes away. So most of the things that we need to promote health, they're there, they're free, and they're readily accessible to us, right? So we can choose to eat real food. We can prioritize sleep. we can choose to move our bodies every single day in a way that's meaningful. We can make sure that our bodies are functioning. We can say no to as many chemicals as we can, and we can live with purpose. And this is really what it's all about. That's how you drive health. And we see that on all, Dan Buettner wrote about all of those blue zones.
Right.
They're not doing anything special. They are living life the way that we were designed from an evolutionary purpose standpoint to live it. That's it.
Yep.
So that will, my course, my answer to breast cancer, that will take you 80% of the way. Now, do some people need testing and intervention beyond that? Yes, certainly.
Yes. Yeah. And I always recommend testing. And unfortunately, if you go to your conventional doctor, you're not going to get much testing.
No. They're going to tell you that your labs are normal and you're fine.
That's exactly right. Or what's so crazy to me is that I'll tell my clients, like, you need to go and ask for a hormone panel. And they'll come back to me and they're like, no, my doctor says she knows I'm in menopause. So she doesn't need to run a hormone panel. She knows I need testosterone. And I'm like, okay, but still, wouldn't it be nice to know where your levels are and where?
Yeah, and the other thing is, and especially in the breast cancer population, you don't only need to know the hormone levels. You need to know the metabolites. You need to know how you're breaking them down, and if you're able to break them down, and how you're breaking them down, and are you getting rid of them, and are you getting stuck in any of those places? So I'll just give a quick plug to the DNA company and the DNA 360, that test, because it is, I think, the best test on the market. It is totally actionable genes that tells you how to nurture your nature. So how to create the right environment for you. And they have a whole hormone panel that lets you know how you're doing in all of that regard. And so I use that test universally on my patients. And I think that it's information that everyone should have, because, like, don't you want to know the best thing for you, the right way for you to eat, what kind of diet you should be on, what kind of exercise is good for you, what kind of exercise isn't good for you, how to protect your heart, how to protect your brain. So I happen to love that test.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, Dr. Jenn, thank you so much for joining me here on the Well and Worthy Life podcast, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So
everywhere.
you can follow me on social media at Dr. Jenn Simmons, and my Jen has 2 N's. And then my website is Real Health MD. And I have so much coming out, but
we'll just follow you on Instagram.
Just follow me on Instagram, and you'll get information about everything that's happening. There's a lot happening.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, thank you again for joining me.
My pleasure.